Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this new session of our doctoral seminar series. My name is Dominique Somda. I'm a research fellow at HUMA, the Institute for Humanities in Africa at the University of Cape Town. The seminar is streaming on Facebook. It's also recorded for our YouTube channel. To ensure the safety of the session, we are asking the participants to please include their full name in the Zoom room. Otherwise, they might find themselves placed into the waiting room. So in the doctoral seminar series, we invite our guests to reflect on the challenges and strategy of doctoral work with a particular focus on the turning points and critical experiences that shaped their research journey. We're also interested in hearing about innovative methods of research. Our speaker today is our good friend, colleague, Dr. Minga Mbweck Kongo. He's going to present on his recently submitted and awarded PhD dissertation. The title of his presentation is Centering Khayelitsha 3 Water. We're very, very pleased to have Minga Kongo today. We are kind of celebrating his great achievement. So let me introduce Minga to those who are new in this space. Minga Mbweck Kongo is an anthropologist and a postdoctoral fellow at HUMA. He has research interest in water sociality, mobility, urbanism, illness, and climate change. He holds a bachelor degree in biomedical sciences, an honorary degrees in social anthropology, and a master's in African studies. His PhD degree research has focused on water in Khayelitsha in Cape Town. He has published several book chapters, and I'm going to let you discover them on a website and in his extended biography. He's also the author of a forthcoming book titled Belonging and Uncertainty, an ethnographic account of a car garden in South Africa. And he's the co-author of the article Structural Xenophobia, the lived experience of migrants from African countries living in South Africa. Minga, welcome. So pleased to have you here today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you, colleagues, for being here today. I would like to first thank you, everybody, for taking their time to be here today with us. And before we start, I prefer to give you a brief outline of how the session is going to be. I'm going to start with thanking many people, and the list is very long, and I don't think I'll be able to thank everybody. For those who I think I may forget their names, I think you may forgive me. You need to know that I'm always with you and you are in my heart. I would like to thank you, the Journal Work Academic Writing Fellowship and the African Cultural Studies by Khayelitsha, who provided me with support through my journey as a PhD student. And I would like to extend my thanks to the Mellon Foundation through HUMA, and also HUMA and its disobedient collective knowledge production approach provided a space for all to finally come together. And I would like to also carry on with thanking the MasterCard Foundation, NRF, to assist me with my honors, masters as well. And also the Japan project. I would like to thank them. It was a project based on South African and Japanese scholars, which resulted to 2 books and 2 book chapters, I think. One of the chapter came recently, which is based on the resilience. I would like to thank the Vice Chancellor, Mamoketi Pakeng, through the UCT Vice Chancellor Scholarship for my PhD, and the Center for African Studies, Anthropology at UCT, and HUMA team. And finally, my supervisors, Francis Nyamjo and Professor Chitonge, and my family as well, a taxpayer in the DRC, Zambia, and South Africa. So thank you to all of you, because it is through your ability to assist me that I'm here today, because I am incomplete without you guys, without this institution. On that note, I would like to ask Dominic, who is the chair, to share a 6-minute clip. And after that, we're going to enter straight into the experience of my field work. So this is not a talk. It's just a sharing of my experience that I went through trying to speak or discover water and sociality in Khayelitsha. Thank you, Dominic. If you can. Thank you.
Of course, Minga. Give me a second and I will share your clip. Can everybody see the screen now?
In July 2020, I went for my second leg of my field work in Khayelitsha. While riding along Baden-Powell Drive, I was met with a strong smell of the largest community gathering along shacks covered by sewage water. It was under the 2020 4-stage lockdown. I stopped along Baden-Powell Drive next to a construction site with worthy taps of machinery and bulldozer. I crossed the road. I went a bit downhill and saw a group of men. I got closer and greeted them. These young men were busy throwing rubbles into a flooded area, trying to level the ground to salvage their properties. The first sight was that shacks were inside the water halfway up from the ground. Massive stagnant water as high as 3 meters in some parts. Cars were drowned inside the dark brown pools of water sewage, characterized by unbearable smells. The strong wind of the Atlantic Ocean engulfed the area, while a 2 to 3 meters sewage water swamped a large part of a Tembeni. No one reported dead in collapsed shacks. Besides, all sorts of dirt from human waste were also visible in the water. I took a shovel, lying next to an older man, to work the soil and assisted the group of men trying to level the ground with the rubble. That day, I was in 2 areas, Island and Msindweni, to observe how water is being accessed. Later, I took a walk in the area to check these communal taps and tanks. I volunteered to participate in water distribution in the area. A month later, I was in an area characterized by the scenes of business and busyness, Site B and Site C sections. But the focus was on Site C in a section called Taiwan, a no-go area partially hidden from the bars of the neighborhood. On corners, unemployed young men, taxi drivers, municipal contractors, cart scrap collectors, and vegetable vendors. We took a short walk to Sipokazi's house. Sipokazi's shacks appear to be built on a wetland. Yet, it was calm and peaceful, but cold from inside. Although this is a lived reality of different settlements, the name provided in this video is pseudonyms for ethical consideration. There were days that I was shocked by the confrontation between the law enforcement and the residents. Inconsistent service delivery from the municipality and ambiguous lack of water was the norm. I walked through the narrow sand passageways of many areas. A distinctive odor characterizes some of these areas due to the rubbish bin kept alongside the road and some in the corners between shacks. Sometimes damp in the passageways, primarily due to the municipal challenges of waste removal management. In addition, sewage water overflows and sometimes human waste from the previous night, which is sometimes found alongside the N2 highway, used as a defecation site. After each review, I felt depressed, overwhelmed, and ultimately confused by what I perceive an area entangled in thick contradictions. I could only fathom the implications for lacking of water at the ground level where residents get lost in the matrix. With that in mind, I realized that residents value the place they come from, places where some resident called a liquid shit, place where some said to me shit fly in people's face, a place where people walk on shit, a place where the sewage water and the smell of shit become the norm. Khayelitsha could be described as a hidden transcript, often hidden from the gazing passing tourists, with a fence along the N2 highway close to the Cape Town International Airport. What are the alternative ways of framing the contemporary Khayelitsha just like home? In what ways is it not Khayelitsha just like home, whenever home may be? How do I account for these similarities and differences? What are the limitations of just like home approach? Many scholars have characterized Khayelitsha as a poor or marginalized area. I characterize it as a social space of incompleteness that forges social relationships.
Thank you. Thank you, Dominic. This clip actually captures everything that has to do with my PhD and also the presentation that I'm going to give today. And I think I'm not going to waste a lot of time because I only have about 15 minutes allocated to me by the chair. And if I go overboard, please stop me, but I'll try my best to be within the time frame. The question is, why water first? Water is a medium that can evoke profound emotional response. And water can challenge the way we experience the world, the way we see things, and the way we see each other. And also a single story about water can ignite a robust debate about dignity, livelihood, personhood, inequality, and identity. Water is an element that one cannot contain it, because the minute we contain it, it becomes an element of traumas, like what we experience in the DRC currently with flood, like what we experienced in KwaZulu-Natal, I think a couple of months ago, what we experienced in Mozambique and other parts of the world. Now, why sanitation? Sanitation, there are many definitions that people give to sanitation. And sanitation, many different scholars define it as a provision of facilities and service for safe disposal of human waste. Now, I would like to go back first to the water crisis a little bit, then come back to my research. I think in the 70s, we had water depletion already in the world. And that's when the United Nations started paying attention to the water issue. And I think in the 80s, we had what we call structural adjustment program, with many countries around the globe start now to privatize water. Now, South Africa is classified as a dry or scarce country. And I think it's the 30th on the list of countries that are prone to water. In 2014, we had a water crisis in Cape Town. We were bombarded with the word called day zero. For those who are familiar with day zero, it meant that water will be cut off from the tap and can only be accessed to certain station assigned by the government. That was in Cape Town. Day zero provided many people to readjust how they use water and how they do activities around water. Now, I would like to explain first my encounter with Khayelitsha. Why Khayelitsha first? I remember working as a car guard, that was years ago, in Philippi. And I used to work in an area that was close to Lansdowne. And Lansdowne Road is a road that takes you from Claremont up to Khayelitsha. I stood along that big path because I was still new in the area, trying to understand how things are done. For me, it was quite intriguing to see how I look at that big road, Lansdowne Road, leading to Khayelitsha, and I'll be asking myself some questions to say like, oh, there are people who lives in Khayelitsha who looks like me. And that kind of like passed by. And then the second time, it was when I worked day shift and I did not have a lift. I did not have money to go home. No, I had money, but I think the reliever came late to relieve me. We were two guys, me and my colleague who was living in Khayelitsha. We asked for a lift and they gave us a lift. Me and him were put at the back of the bakkie. Bakkie is, how do we call bakkie? Is a little truck. But the driver was in front alone, but me and him were put at the back. And we're having a conversation while we were going to drop the guy. We dropped him at 10 o'clock, around there. And he was asking me, do you know Khayelitsha? I said, I don't know Khayelitsha. He said, this is where I live. I look, it was at night, I could not see much. It was just shack around there. And the other day, I was relieved late by one of the guy. It was on Sunday. I asked one of my colleagues who live in Khayelitsha to say, can you please give me a lift? Because that time I was living in Claremont, in one of the suburbs. He said, it's fine, let me go home with you. I'll take a shower, get ready, then I can drop you back because my church is close to where you live. I said, thank you so much. We went at his place. That was the time I saw Khayelitsha with my 2 eyes during the day. Now, what motivated this research? This research is motivated by many factors. One is that Khayelitsha is the biggest township in Cape Town and in South Africa that accommodate mainly Black people, but there are other races that live in Khayelitsha. And Khayelitsha is a product of mobility. And many people access water through communal tap, but there are those who have the ability to access water through within the house. Many residents in Khayelitsha struggle also with the issue of defecation, which is toilet. So these are some of the points that push me to do research in Khayelitsha. Now, in 2020, as you heard from the clip, we all know that it was during COVID period. I took a big chance to go to Khayelitsha. UCT provided guidance during that time to say face-to-face interaction is prohibited. You don't have to do face-to-face field work. You don't have to be on the field. You need to find other alternatives to do research. But for me, it was a bit kind of like striking because I have friends, colleagues, family members that lives in Khayelitsha. And when we speak about lockdown, the lockdown only works in the suburb, doesn't work in informal settlement, because how does that work? How can the lockdown work in an environment where you have people or household that use one communal tap, let's say 300 or 500 households using 1 or 2 communal tap? So how do we explain the disparity of the lockdown? It was quite impossible. So therefore, we had visitors, we were visiting each other during that period. And I told myself, I think this is a period that I could actually do my research. But I was very cautious and careful with what I had to do. I consulted with my supervisors to say, look, I think I don't have time to wait. I'm going to do it because my friends, my families do come and visit me here, and I also go and visit them. I can take a chance to do that. Because of my incompleteness of being, I had to reach out through conviviality to ask one of the taxi driver, who is an independent Uber driver, to assist me to collect data because I wasn't familiar with Khayelitsha. I knew Khayelitsha, but I did not know the entire Khayelitsha. Because he had the knowledge of the environment, he said to me, it's fine, my brother, I'm going to help you to show you other places that you want to do your research. I said, thank you. So him and his girlfriend assisted me with data collection. But it wasn't really every day that I had to go with them, except that, they introduced me to some of these areas that for you to enter, you have to have an appointment, or people need to know you in order for you to enter that space. And I think this is what we call people that old guard, they're guarding their area. Why? Because of uncertainty, because of people coming in the area, they do research, and a lot of abuse that went through in Khayelitsha for the past. I was confronted with that as well, but I managed to overcome some of those difficulties. Now, I'm going to move a bit quicker because my time is getting to, I only have about 5 minutes. I use incompleteness as a concept to speak about water in Khayelitsha. For those who will understand incompleteness, or let me just rephrase, I don't use incompleteness in a negative way, because every time, sometimes when I say incompleteness, people think it's a lack. I don't use it in that way. I use it in a way that it's because of lack, it's because of not having water that push people to be more creative, to find ways. I do know there are many scholarships that speak about Khayelitsha in a negative way. Khayelitsha is an area where we have crime. It's an area where you have all these bad attributes about space. Now, we should also understand that in Khayelitsha, you have human beings who lives there. They are people. For me, it was not about looking at crime, looking at looking at all these negative stuff. For me, it was about how do these people get by? And the focus was on water. And I followed them. I was following water, and it was water that led me to different people, just to see how people move around, how creative they are, how it is difficult to live in an environment where you have to condition your anatomy, or you have to condition your body because you don't have water. So that was my point there, trying to figure out, trying to trace all these points. And I think for me, considering Khayelitsha is like a puzzle box that is so tight, that requires humility and courage to open that puzzle box. I'm using this metaphor to understand the layering, the contradictions that come within Khayelitsha. Khayelitsha itself is a city. And I did not want to speak about Khayelitsha as if it's somewhere isolated place where there are people who don't make sense, where there are poverty and all that. We know Khayelitsha. We know there's poverty in Khayelitsha. We know there's crime everywhere. But I wanted to speak about Khayelitsha, giving Khayelitsha a different picture, to say that, yes, we understand all these stuff, but it's more than that. It's a city that accommodates human beings, and we should be able to look at what people do than focusing on the crime. So what I did was to use Chinua Achebe's metaphor, where he said, a world is like a mask dancing. If you want to look at it, you need to stand at a different vantage point. So what I did was that I stood in Khayelitsha because of my incompleteness. I stood on different vantage points to try and understand water, to try and listen to people's story. And I wasn't there to provide solution, but I was there just to get their stories and try to see how we can also try to, I spoke earlier about disobedience, and that's the work that we do at HUMA, which is how can we frame differently Khayelitsha or Africa in terms of knowledge production? Because we are all stuck up into reproducing the same ideas of space, ideas of, with, I would say, colonial lens to say, this area is not good, that area is good. Because if you go to Chicago, you may not walk at night. There are places that you cannot walk at night. There are places that you go in Brussels, you cannot walk at night, like Molenbeek. I've been there. So we cannot just focus on Khayelitsha to say that this is a bad place and we have to avoid to go there. There are many key findings, but I'm just gonna give one, and we can see how we can engage as go around. One of the findings is that the framing of access to water as a function of capitalism and the contextualization of water as an economic good and not a public good. So I'm going to stop there. And then I think while we're talking, I'm going to elaborate on these key findings or on a method or on a conceptual framework. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minga, for this presentation and for sharing the film, the little video with us. I think it's very helpful. Also for everybody that is joining you and not from Cape Town, not from South Africa. So thank you again, and you've been like a very valued member of our doctoral fellow community for the last 2 years, and it's great to have your input on methods. And something that we often discuss together and in our larger community is your interest in centering not only Khayelitsha but water. In our last doctoral seminar, we discussed with Emily Guita the interest and the importance of centering materiality, and you decided for water. What do you think, and how do you think your work could, could inspire others, and what is the benefit of entering the field through water and through like this kind of materiality?
Thank you so much, Dom, for that question. And I think we cannot generalize, because water is something, it's a very intimate element. We need water in order for us to be who we are today, to wash, to be presentable, to eat, to cook, to do many things. But we cannot generalize the idea of water to say that because water is being accessed in, let me say, in a suburb, in a particular way, and it is the same in places like informal settlement. When I speak about informal settlement, it's in a context of Khayelitsha. If you go to Kenya, we have Kibera. They also have a big, largest informal settlement in Kibera, where the same pattern of water apply there, where you see those who are on the margin are being pushed aside because of the idea of saying that water is an element of economic good and not a social good. So I think if we understand that, to be what it is to be human in an environment where you are deprived of water, for instance. And I think this is what I'm trying to speak about. But here I'm using South Africa as a context, but it can apply to many countries, South America, Asia, or Global South. Thank you.
Thank you, Minga. So what I hear you say is that water in Khayelitsha is a particularly good good thing to think from because of how important and complicated the access is, right? It's precisely because of those characteristics that water is a good entry point to create and produce an ethnography of social relationship and equality in Khayelitsha.
Yes, thank you. Because if you look at specialities of South Africa, particularly Cape Town, you're going to see that everything that is happening in Khayelitsha in terms of water is being conditioned by the apartheid planning of water. Therefore, you have areas that are affluent area and also the one that we call townships. So if we understand that, I don't think we'll have much problem. It's much easier to say, okay, if these inequalities were produced, because there's an inequality being produced just in terms of water. And these inequalities are not only through suburb and also townships, because within townships itself, you do have inequalities. For instance, those in formal houses access water through communal, not through communal tap, they access water through, they can summons water from the bathroom or from the bedroom. But for the one in an informal settlement, can only access water through a communal tap. Now, the disparities exist in a relation to who pays and who do not pay. Because for those who use communal tap, communal tank, even trucks, they do not pay for water. And therefore, they do not see themselves as legitimate citizens. And they think it's not really easy for them to hold the government into account because of water. But for those who pay, it's much easier to make a phone call to say, I have a problem with water here. And it's much easier for them to solve the issue. And these are the challenges that are found in Khayelitsha. So many challenges beside water. There's also sanitation, because you can't speak about water without sanitation. So how do you use water how do you use the toilet if you don't have water? And I spoke about the issue of people using bushes, using the N2 highway as a defecation site. And there are stories that are very intimate stories that came through on the field. And some stories remain with me, and I cannot really share them because they're very intimate. How people talks about living conditions. How old people, for instance, how do we account for these similarities and difference? Or you have an old couple looking for a place to defecate and all that. So it's a challenge. Within the inequality in Khayelitsha, you have also tensions that arise in Khayelitsha between different settlements. The first settlement that I enter, as you see on the video, that was in through Baden Powell Drive, and the settlement is called Etembeni. Next to Etembeni, you have what we call Empolweni. So the two communities fought over water. And there were issues of blocking a driver, like I may use the word kidnap. Why? Because they want water. They didn't want to kill the driver. They didn't want anything. All what they did was, we're going to block the driver who's bringing the truck to provide water in a different settlement and toilet in a different settlement when we also need water and toilet. And of course, their demand was executed by the government. They gave them 5 toilets. And with the 5 toilets, they decided to give 1 toilet to one of the elder couple over 60 and 70 years who was also living in an environment. So these are the tensions, these are the problems. It's a lot to unpack in these sessions, but I think the focus could be much more on the method or concept and other few issues, but I'm more than happy to speak about some of the stories that came out on the field.
Thank you so much, Minga. Do not worry, we have plenty of questions for you. And it's really lovely to hear speak, about the whole of a neighborhood, of a township, through the story of water. Of course, as you just finished your PhD and completed this huge project and this huge trajectory, there's a lot of interest in how you became who you are, Minga. And we have a question from Divine, a very long question. So maybe we can ask Divine if he would like to unmute and ask you directly. Divine, would you like to ask your question? Otherwise, are we ready? Okay, so let me read Divine's question. Minga, can you speak a little bit about your becoming? How you entered the university and got to the subject to do research, to do a PhD, and also on water? Did you always want to do this, or do you sustain motivation over these past years? What struggles, opportunities, what kind of medicine can you pass on to others? And also, what is fulfillment? Are you finally complete, given your focus on incompleteness?
Thank you. That's quite tough and easy question to answer. Divine always comes with complicated questions, but I'll try to to respond to the best of my ability. I try a lot to enter UCT with my medical background, and I think I wasn't allowed to carry on with that. Then I moved to anthropology. My research in anthropology during honors was based on belonging, because I was looking at how Kagad navigates space in Cape Town. And that research became too intimate and became too personal, because there was so much that was going on with the research that I felt like I don't want to carry on with this because it's too personal. I reflect in that research. Then I shift so quickly. How did I shift? You can ask Divine is there, because I remember having a meeting with him. I think it was the time where I was getting ready to go to Rhodesia. It's like, what are you going to do with your master's? Immediately I thought, okay, I can actually use my medical background to focus on water in Khayelitsha. I wanted to look at water and sanitation, but it wasn't easy for me to do water and sanitation because I wanted to use a lot of medical ideas through that research. But I ended up using the idea of adaptation to the water crisis in Khayelitsha. That was my master. My master's was based on that. So this research is just an extension from where I left to look at water and sociality. Through the PhD, I would say it was not something that I planned because I did not know if Cape Town will go through water crisis during that period. I did not know. I did not have any idea. But it just happened that, when I started the research, Cape Town went through a water crisis, which I think it was a good idea to take because Divine and I were kind of like brainstorming about what is the direction that you're going to take. Are you going to take the belonging or the identity politics, or are you going to take other path? And I say, I'm going to take water. And also I have a colleague, a friend, Vito, for those who are familiar with him. We had also a robust debate, me and him. He came to see me at UCT. He's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I want to do the identity politics and I want to do water. And he's like, okay, what is it that you want to do? I said, I want to do water. He said, carry on, focus with water and see how we can do. So in short, that was the beginning of how I started my idea of looking at the water issue. I don't know if Divine is satisfied with that answer.
What we can do is that if Divine is not satisfied with the answer, we may take another question. In the meantime, there's a few more hands that are raised. I see Babaka, but Babaka just disappeared. Babaka, are you still here? Otherwise, I
Yes,
see.
yes,
Okay,
I'm here.
Babacar. Yes, please.
Yes, very briefly. Thank you, guys. I'm happy to see you again. I think my question is kind of related to Divine's one.
Okay.
I was more curious about, Minga, your the question of ethical positionality. Where can we find yourself in this whole issue of water access and water sanitation? Because I feel that I did not hear a kind of little story where we can find yourself positioned within the whole social matrix of social relationship. So because I saw you, there is a video you were filming, there is a camera, the issue of coming with a camera, because the presence of the camera itself can alter people's relationship on the field. So how did you navigate, or how did you take into account those theoretical questions in your fieldwork? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. I think the first thing in anthropology, for you to do a research, you need what we call ethical approval, because I was dealing with human as a subject. So I need to be very sensitive to what I produce, what I record, and what I said on the video. Reason why I said there are key points, there are issues that I could not really record or raise or write about it, because those issues were close to my heart. Now, positioning myself, I position myself as an insider and also an outsider, because I had to explain to people that I'm not here to save or to provide any service. I'm here to listen to your stories. And also, it actually takes time for you to create a relationship with people, for them to trust you, for you to start recording the event. So I had to spend a lot of time with them over the weekend, talking first, hear their stories, and then I'm like, okay, this is what I have. Do you think we can? They say, sure, you can actually do that. If you saw on the video clip, I have contracted from the municipalities that were providing water there. He took me time to first be with them, for them to allow me to even volunteer to go and give water. It's something that is not really an easy thing to do, because who are you to do that? And some of the clips, what I did was to ask people that I came very close to record themselves, because it was COVID period. And I said, please try to record and send me, I'll come and collect the recording. So they'll do the recording of themselves, and then I'll go and collect the recording. And also the people that assisted me to collect the data were very familiar with the environment, whereby there was a bit of tension where people were saying there was a researcher who came here. She provided people with money. What are you going to give us? And I'm like, I'm not here to provide money. I'm not here for that. I am here just to listen to your story. So the ethical considerations there is very, very significant in terms of research. As an anthropologist, I'm very aware of all that, the dynamic of the camera, what the camera can do. So the camera was not like, I'm going to film like a filmmaker to go and do, no, it wasn't that. It was very specific and very particular when and how we have to do that. And if you look in the video and also in my work, I exclude children in most of my clips, try to not really show children, but the lens sometimes go through kids, and what are you going to do with that? For instance, the event where police are coming to demolish people's sheds. I mean, it's a public place. I am allowed to record. There, people have their cameras, they have their phone to record. It's a public space that everybody's coming to see what is happening. So I was very much cautious of that. I was very much cautious of my positionality as a student from UCT coming to do research. So I had my own way of entering the site, not to enter with arrogance, to show that, I'm it's just to, first, most of my data came from conversation, to talk to people, to go volunteer, to assist them making braai, because there's a big business in Khayelitsha where people sell meat and all that. I'll go there and say, I'm here today to assist you. And, or I'm here to see how we can do. We'll sit together, we'll eat, we'll enjoy together. And that also create kind of like a bond where I became accustomed to what they do. And it was much easier for them to relate to me and also for them to say, yes, you can record. Yes, you cannot record. Thank you.
Thank you, Minga. We have a question from Kwasi, and also I can see in the chat that we have 2 other questions, so we will take them later. Kwasi, would you like to unmute?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minga. It is a powerful presentation. I've really enjoyed it. I think this is the first time I've come into contact with your field or your work, and it's so great. My question has to do with the incompleteness. I don't know if you would like to highlight that a bit, because the incompleteness could stem from the researcher's point of view. It could be from what you see on the ground. How did it come out in your discussions with the people? How did they see that aspect of incompleteness in their lives? Because sometimes you go to a place as a researcher or as an individual, you tend to feel that these things are not right. But the people who are in that situation are okay with what is happening. They are happy with it. They enjoy it. I don't know how that came out in your study. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwasi. I think here I'm going to go back again to the idea that I said, I'm not using incompleteness in a negative way as a lack, just lack and lack. I use incompleteness. I'm going to give a basic example here. In Khayelitsha, you have shacks, formal houses, together, all mixed together in one area. So what happened there is that you have people in informal settlement who are accessing water through communal tap. You have people in formal houses, when their water runs out, those informal houses, they go into informal settlement to collect water. And when people in informal settlement also have problem with water, or not even water, for instance, problem with toilet, they will go to those informal houses to access. Not all of them allow them to do so, but few people allow them to do so. So incompleteness is not something that, it can be applied everywhere in all sphere of life. Now, when I use the word incompleteness, residents, for instance, they will tell you that because we don't have water, therefore, we know which pipe move from one point to the other point. So we're going to make sure we access water from that particular pipe. So incompleteness is the ability to reach out in order to activate oneself, to access or to have whatever that one need to have. Even so, there's no such thing like being complete in life. Incompleteness can be applied in every factor, things can be incompleteness. Human being can be incomplete. Those in shacks are incomplete without those in formal houses. And those in formal houses are also incomplete without those in shacks. You can see how water play a role within Khayelitsha itself. But what does incompleteness do? Because incompleteness goes with conviviality. What is conviviality? Conviviality is also the ability to reach out in a convivial manner to say, okay, this is what I can, this is what I need to do. Incompleteness is not a matter of lacking water. It's a question of possibilities, because some people do not have the possibility to have water. That does not mean they are not human beings. That does not mean they are less human than those who have water. So that's how I'm trying to apply this concept of incompleteness. I don't know if I'm making sense there. Thank you.
Thank you, Minga. And you will have the opportunity to say a little bit more, because those two questions, and I'm going to take them together, are also asking from you to maybe reflect on incompleteness again. So there's a question from Val Bruce. Could you please mention some ways in which incompleteness of access to water creates opportunities for resilience? So incompleteness and resilience. And there's a question from Malvern that also thank you for your presentation. And so Malvern is asking, can you briefly discuss the gendered social relations in your research? And what are the dynamics in your case studies with regards to water and the implication from incompleteness?
Thank you. I'm going to be brief with the first question in terms of resilience, because the ideas of not having water and be able to think loud to have water somewhere else, that itself is resilience. You know, because these are people who are kind of like being forgotten, but they make sure that they survive. That itself is resilience to how they access water. So back to the question of social relationships, there was some dynamics there where you see people from a neighbor, from informal setting, going to access toilet in formal houses. And you also have the dynamic of family relationships or landlord relationships, whereby people, like if you go to Khayelitsha today, there's no space anymore. There are areas that are actually born, like currently during the COVID-19, and these areas take different forms, different names. For instance, you will have a Tembeni, you will have COVID-19, you will have sanitizer, you will have pandemic, you will have social distance. These are names that came during the lockdown. And these are people that move from one area to the other area. They create some of these social relationships. For instance, at the communal tap itself, there are relationships that are born during that period where people speak about their issues of water, issues of families, issues of boyfriend, girlfriend, gossips happen there at the communal tap, communal tank, and also at the truck. So these relationships are not, I don't define these relationships in a, how can I say, I don't know if I can use the word sociological, or I don't want to be trapped into that, but I'm using these relationships that are born through encounters, where one encounter the other person. Just because they do not have water, they make sure that, you know, they reach out and they create bonds amongst themselves. Through siblings, for instance, there are relationships that are born through siblings, where siblings will split. One found himself or herself in a different settlement, the other one in a different settlement. For instance, there was a story of a man who I named Radebe, who lived in COVID-19. But he left his girlfriend inside sea in an area called Taiwan with his elder brother. So what he does, during the day, he'll go with 2 bottles of water to Taiwan to go and collect water there and to wash there, and then back to his place, which is COVID-19, where he had to cook or do other few things. So the relationships, Malvern, are a bit complex, and they cannot be contained in one definition to say this is what's happening. They are so entangled in a way that, you know, it's very, very difficult for one to point and say this is what it is. It's just a mixed relationship that you get. And of course, the relationships at the tank, at the truck, access to water, access to toilet, access to many other things are there, those the relationships. And also you get people in formal houses who will ask people in informal settlement to look after their houses, to look after their kids while they're out to go to work or go to the hospital to attend for doctor's appointment. So relationships exist in different forms. Thank you.
Thank you, Minga. This was a beautiful answer, and that gives also to people that haven't read you yet, like an idea of the richness of your ethnography. There's quite a beautiful review of your work by Ahmed in the chat. I won't read the entire review because it's quite long, but I'll go directly to the question. So Ahmed is asking you how you have managed to keep a distance from delving into politics of inequalities and governance while dealing with such hardships, difficulties of life and water scarcity.
I think as an anthropologist, when you deal with people, you deal with human beings, how do you detach yourself from them? It's very difficult. And I'm sure some people will say, no, it's fine. You need to detach yourself and produce academic work. Yes, we do that, but somehow or somehow you are caught. I was caught as well in a mix of so many things happening there. So many emotions, so many conflicts, a lot of things. Every time I get home, I still remember, I will do what we call a review. I'll reflect and record myself about what happened during the day. I have a lot of recording, and there are times that I'll get home tired with so much sand in my head, in a lot of things that, makes me to feel like, what is it that I can do? But it's so difficult because I wasn't there to provide service. I wasn't there to do whatever. I was there to listen to their stories. And I think it's a very fine line to draw there. How do you draw the line? One should use one's intuition, but the idea of detaching totally cannot exist because those people exist because we reflect. They are who they are because of us. I am who I am because of them. I am today because I produced this ethnographic work because of those people. So it's not really easy for me to detach myself to say, I'm done, it's completely done. No, even after the field work or research, even today, I sometimes go and visit some of these friends or colleagues. We talk and we speak and all that. So detachment, it's a very difficult thing to do, but it's possible to detach oneself from the field.
Thank you, Minga, for your answer. We are approaching, or we're just beyond the time that was allocated, but I still want to ask you a last question. And like kind of going full circle and going back to the question of becoming that divine as asked you. You are now at a very specific moment in your trajectory, just after this like huge work that was with you from the master to the PhD. So how do you move forward? How do you move on? You still have to carry this question and also publish your results and in articles and maybe a book. But how do you ask question for the future of your research? Like how do you open yourself to new possible objects? So I would want to ask you if you're already in this moment where your curiosity is like leading you in other directions. So that's a question of where are you, Dr. Minga Kongo?
Thank you so much. I think to move forward, I would like to take a very provocative path in looking at politic of shit, liquid shit, for instance, because the word liquid shit, this was a metaphor that residents themselves use on the field to express the idea of living close proximity to shit, to sewage water. So I wanted to venture myself into that, to look at how does it work when you have to condition your anatomy as a man, as a woman, or a child, to know exactly this is the time that I need to eat in order for me to stop and not going to the toilet at night because toilet is far. How do you do that? So I'm trying to venture into that. And I think that's going to be my next project. Looking at the water and the body, how these two relate to one another. Because we do take for granted the issue of water. We think, yeah, water is just like that. It's like air, we breathe air. In the future, if they ask you to pay for air, what will you do? Because today they're asking you to pay for water, and still we take water for granted. So I'm trying to look at that, that idea of water and the body in the future through anthropology. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Minga. And again, I'm absolutely fascinated by the way you raise question, right? Like you always, if you ask a question, Minga, what are you interested in? Your answer will be a thing, will be a material thing. And that's quite fascinating to see that that's how you weave like your questioning, and the abstraction come in the second time. But first, your object is a material thing. And it's quite fascinating. So thank you so much for helping us understand your process. Congratulations on like a wonderful achievement. We are very, very proud of you, and it's so lovely, and I'm sure very encouraging for everybody that's coming, behind you, like following your steps, and that are going to write and also conclude their research in a few months or years. Thank you so much, Minga.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you, colleagues, for coming, and thank you to everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.